You know, there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey, this is Dave McAnally from Derision Cult, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey folks, it's John the Bod, aka the Bodfather. I'm welcoming back my good friend, Mr. Dave McAnally, and his solo project, Derision Cult.
Hey, what's up, man?
What's going on, my brother? I'm glad to have you back on here again.
Yeah, going good. Been busy month. You're in Kentucky. I'm in Chicago, and we're about to get a giant blizzard. So, hunker down for the next few weeks.
So, man, how excited are you to have this new album?
Oh, Mercenary Notes.
Yes, sir. Mercenary Notes Part Uno, number 1, folks.
Yeah, this is number 1. Yeah, number 2. Hopefully next year. Good, man. You know, we got started working on this probably about last year at this time, and differently than other things I've done. You know, I worked with a producer, Sean Payne from Cyanotic, and it just grew. You know, we started. You know, Sean and I started kind of with demos, putting tracks together, and then we got Chris Connolly from like Ministry and Pigface and Legend. Sang on a track, and from there we got Reeves Gabrels from David Bowie's band and The Cure right now.
Nice.
Some killer leads on it, and then Justin Broadrick from Godflesh did some remixes, and so it and it's just been this just constant like refinement over the last year. I spent more time on this than I have any project I've ever done, and I know it's not like it's Chinese democracy or anything, but for me, man, a year's a long time. But yeah, really excited to have it out. Reception's been really good. It's on Glitch Mode Records, so that whole crowd has been really receptive to it. So yeah, been fun. It's one of those things where I've been sitting on, who's going to be on it and these tracks for so long, and I knew it was going to be such a kind of step up, I would say, from the last things that we've done, that it was fun to finally get it out, Yeah,
that was going to be my next question, because you normally don't sit on an album that long, but sitting on this album and taking your time more with this one, do you see a change in yourself? Do you see more of a growth personally, maybe, or do you see like, wow, this sounds a lot different than, this much time on it than previous albums or whatever?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, the biggest thing was just working with Sean and going through kind of his method of doing things. And I've been a fan of Cyanotic for a while now, but he's very much a, work on stuff, let it sit for a while, come back, and suddenly all the things that, you thought sound amazing don't sound so great anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff. And I think he's a lot more helped me be a lot more meticulous with getting vocals tighter and the layers thicker and all that. So that was probably just kind of the virtue of kind of saying we're going to do things kind of through his workflow, because it obviously works. That was probably the biggest change. I really enjoyed the process, and I really enjoyed just bringing other folks in to jam on stuff. It's like, why not, right? Because in this era, it's not like it worked out actually with with Reeves Gabrels, who has been a guitar hero of mine since the early 90s. It just worked out with Omicron. The Cure was mixing a new album, and he couldn't get over to the UK because they weren't letting Americans fly during, you remember when Omicron was going on, and we had some downtime, and he was able to do the tracks from his house, and we did everything over email, and it, because you can do things. I'm old enough. I remember when it was not like that, and like if you want to record with people, like where I lived, I mean, this from Iowa, around the Slipknot guys, like, well, good luck getting Reeves Gabrels to come to Des Moines, Iowa. So it's like that has been a big change, and we have a lot of plans for the second one. Nothing, as far as special guests and stuff like that. So that I'm like all about that kind of stuff now. Whereas I think before I was sort of like kind of this sequestered person in a basement.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, because last time I talked to you, you were just like, you're still in that cocoon. You didn't want to like branch out and have, this person, that person to do whatever.
Well,
and now you're seeing it.
Well, it definitely helped having Sean produce this. Because it's like, all right, I'm not going to hand somebody something they're going to feel like sounds like a demo. Like, all right, this punches. And, and we, everyone was into it that we reached out to. So, that really helped. But I do think, the other thing I think really kind of changed my thinking on this was, we initially started in on 10 tracks, and Sean, he kind of brought the idea of like, dude, half-hour music's about all people really need to hear. Let's break this up into 2 parts. And, so I think probably, and so far that's worked pretty well. I mean, we did put out that Deaf Blood single right before, just to, because we made a big animated video for it and wanted to kind of share that beforehand. But I think I could see going forward now being, maybe more just songs or, little 4 or 5 song things. It's a nice digestible way for people to hear music, versus like, here's my 15 song opus that, 9 of those songs no one's ever going to listen to except for like my close friends, so.
And it's sad. And you hit the nail on the head right there. And just what he told you is that people don't have that attention span. They want something, for about 30 minutes or maybe less, and then they're done. Me and you come from the ages where give us those 15 tracks on that album. We'll sit all damn day and listen to them. And now it's just
I mean, in the 90s, it was like, well, we didn't have anything else to do. It's like, well, you're going to sit in your room and, I guess there were video games, but there wasn't, YouTube, there wasn't, and so I think there was that. Plus, the other thing too is you didn't have playlists and Spotify and everything. And so if I wanted to listen to music on a road trip, whatever CDs I had, their tapes I had, that was it. And that's kind of a bygone era, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny though, because in some ways, well, especially with actually I got one right here. I kind of think some of the old, this is a cassette.
Yeah, there you go.
4-track cassette of Deaf Blood.
Look at that bad boy.
Well, I thought it was great. I mean, I did it just because, like, partially, like, I wanted to do something with the slip. They're fun to design, Like, this thing has a, not to sound like a infomercial guy, but, like, we made it with blue tapes and.
Oh, sweet.
It's cool. And I'd say we're about 70% through all that first run of those things. So people are interested in, and I like vinyl I get, because I think vinyl, there is a legit change in the sound. Cassettes I wouldn't have thought, but man, there's definitely allegiance to them. I know Brutal Resonance, their record label, they only do cassettes. And but anyways, going back to my original point with that, and we were selling CDs, which I hadn't pressed CDs in a while. I do kind of wonder if there's going to be a revival of that. People sitting and listening to an album. Maybe not, en masse. Like, there's always going to be that crowd that they're listening to music passively. But just as I see this stuff, like. Vinyl, they say vinyl had the biggest sales ever the last year. And most of that is going to be like legacy stuff, people buying Metallica on vinyl, and
Oh,
more
yeah.
to them. But
Yeah.
as kids get into the format and stuff, it could open new doors. But you're right, it's that era of a concept album where you sit and you scrutinize the liner notes and what did he mean by that? And yeah, I'd love to think the kids still do that, but I don't think so.
So let me ask you this, man. Working with Sean on this album, did he like rejuvenate your fire for music as far as like working with him? Did he get something out of you on this that just finally came out and you're shocked about it?
Well, I've always kind of been, I've always got to be doing something. But I kind of think it was a little bit, not talking out of turn, but sort of the opposite a little bit, because Sean, the last big Cyanotic album was The Trigger Effect, and that came out in 2019. It'd kind of been a slow year for him. I think, the pandemic affected everybody, and this was like the first big thing he worked on net new, and so I think it kind of lit him up. Cyanotic played some shows. I brought the tracks to him. A lot of times producers like that, especially with what he's just here in Chicago, and I'm not saying this to throw anybody under the bus, but the reality is sometimes guys like him will have people come to him with a lyric and kind of a half-assed melody, and they expect him to turn it into the next Nine Inch Nails.
Oh my God.
Like, he had a lot of that kind of stuff. And, I came to him with tracks, it wasn't like, I want you to turn me into an industrial metal guy. Like, we brought the tracks, and
Yeah.
it was, Sean, can you bring your production and the way your drums sound to this? And he did. And we did make some arrangement things. So I think him being able to kind of work in that way kind of inspired him. The one thing I guess I do take away from kind of how I changed is there's one track on there called it's called Slaves Rebuild, and it's more of like, it started off with a real kind of country vibe, and Sean really gravitated towards that. And that was one of the first ones we really picked apart and everything. And kind of melding more of like kind of outlaw country into the industrial metal sound in like a not cheesy way,
Yeah.
like, let's take these minor chords and stuff. And I know Al Jorgensen put out that Buck Satan album, and it's cool, but like we weren't thinking like, let's actually capture the spirit of what outlaw country is meant to be, but with an industrial metal aesthetic. And that Slaves Rebuild track is the closest we came to that on this one, but we're going to do more of that. And so that kind of, without Sean being able to kind of produce it to the point it was, I don't think I would have ever kind of seen that, or I wouldn't be able to get there on my own, in other words. So that kind of notion of chasing more of that outlaw country mixed with industrial metal, you'll definitely on the Mercenary Part 2, there's stuff we're working on that'll explore that a lot more.
So on the last album, Charlatans Incorporated, you talked about ways the media preys on people's emotions. So on the new album, you're talking about solutions and how to move forward in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And putting this pandemic behind us in these albums in sequence.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I definitely got a muse. But I think that with you're right, and with Charlatans Inc., I think I spent so many years in the ad industry and built these campaigns, and so I kind of felt really strongly that, like, hey, a lot of the narratives and a lot of the news and a lot of the things that people think, I see the through line between how those got created, and very much in the political space. And Charlatans Inc., it very deliberately needed to be kind of gunmetal gray and not a lot of flavors. And, it's it's a straightforward heavy album, whereas Mercenary Notes is a lot more diverse. But kind of looking back, I felt like Charlatans didn't really it pointed out all this stuff, but it didn't really have any opinion on like, well, what do you do about it? And this one we wanted to kind of light that up more. Some of the tracks on Mercenary Notes are things that I had around for a while, and we just kind of reworked them into where they are now. But I think the big underlying current is and we talk about this on Bastards of the World, definitely that track Mercenary, the Year Hope Failed, that you have to be cognizant that everything you're reading and seeing, and there is an agenda to it, and you need to ask, is this intended to piss me off, or make me feel one way or the other, and just kind of like assess that. And the other thing too is bandwidth. People need space. They need, it's good to unplug every now and then.
Yeah.
I see that with, people my kids' age, that where anxiety and all that, it sets in. And I don't think that's getting any better. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how many of these little alerts about screen time come into your iPhones. Nobody makes money when people aren't affixed to a screen.
That's exactly right. There you go.
I think, and I don't think that means, don't use technology or don't be plugged in, but it does mean be aware of creating space for yourself and stuff like that. We talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about being mindful of, just how much messaging and stuff, for lack of a better term, exists within the way you read news and in the way, things are shared and so forth. It's funny now because I think, especially with some of the stuff with you're seeing it in two places right now. One, that FTK kid, Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto kid.
Yeah, that's in a lot of trouble right now.
He's going for life for sure.
Oh, he gone. He gone.
But now the artifacts are coming out about all the ways he was donating to certain charities and basically buying fluff pieces about himself, which companies do this. I've done it. You will buy blocks of articles, and we saw praises being sung about that kid from some pretty reputable sources, and that's he got caught and it happened to be a fraud, but people need to know that's going on everywhere, and the point, what we saw with him was that he kind of created that narrative about himself as being this genius wonder kid when, he didn't know shit from what, it just turns out like now it's coming out, and I don't know much about crypto, but it seems very apparent that these are egregiously incompetent people. But he created that narrative about himself, and like it was almost like an emperor with no clothes scenario where no one wanted to say anything. Well, that's a really good case study on how a lot of the narratives and perceptions we have of certain things and tenants and brands and stuff, that's kind of that's pretty. That's not uncommon. Then the other thing I think is really interesting is we're seeing, and I don't really have any opinion one way or the other on whether, politically, but Elon Musk has been doing that Twitter dump where, they're starting to show kind of some of the back channeling and stuff that happens. And, in this case, it's looking one way politically, but, I don't think that necessarily makes one better than the other. I think what we're seeing is pretty common, like that's sort of going on everywhere. And so it just goes back to what we, in Mercenary Notes, we really hit on that, that point of like, put that filter in front of everything. What is this trying to provoke out of me? What do we, and it's funny, you can do the reconnaissance and the post-mortem on Sam Bankman-Fried now and read those articles. And I do this because I'm a nerd about this stuff. you do see the narratives and the through lines and the things where they're trying to make him look really altruistic, and you know, it's going to play out the way it plays out. But yeah, that's been a really for me, that's been an interesting microcosm, because it's sort of it's like a case study in all the things that we talked about on that EP.
What led the track "The Year Hope Failed" to be that first song released off this album, man? What was it about that you guys decided, yeah, that's got to go first? We got to put this out.
Well, a couple of interesting things about that track. So the samples in it, where the guy's saying the world has a data problem, you all know, that was actually stuff that I recorded in a meeting. So that is one of the futurist scientists at Microsoft, about 7 years ago, basically telling the agency I was working at that we needed to be prepared for within the next 5 years or so, AI was going to replace most of the analysts and the entry-level college jobs. He was literally telling us how the AI is just better at pinpointing and better with data than humans are. And, you know, he literally said in the meeting, human beings are shit with data. And he showed it. Like, look at all the pattern recognition. I thought that was a really important point to set out, is that, you know, as all this stuff's happening. But, you know, just from a pure, so there's that lyrical side. And I thought it was kind of interesting that wasn't something we grabbed from a movie or something. It just happened to be a recording of a meeting I had. You know, we just wanted to put a big thrasher out right away, you know. It's probably the most similar to Charlatans Inc. because, you know, those tracks are all really fast and thrashy, and we didn't, we just thought that'd be a good way to kick off the EP. But I think too, the message in it of, you know, we revisited on Mercenary that I Survive America is kind of a big theme that, you know, is central to that song, and it plays throughout it. And then Cyanotic did a remix of that track, which is the 6th track on the EP. And that turned out really cool because it has like this real 80s kind of horror sci-fi synth to it.
You've been setting on these songs for a while. Are there any of these songs that didn't make Charlotte's Incorporated that is now on this album? Or
yeah, that's actually, there's one on the next one that I didn't put on Charlotte. I just never got it finished.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there's one that appeared, doesn't really have a title yet, but it's more of like a thrashy thing. But that would be about it. There's a few things that we have kind of in the hopper that have been sitting around for a while and never really got released. So I mentioned, you know, with Sean, really got invigorated to explore this kind of intersection of outlaw country and industrial metal, you know, in a non-cheesy way. And I've got a few tracks that kind of lend themselves to that. And so those are going to be things that we explore. So yeah, just the one.
Was there a track, Dave, that you guys were working on for this album that totally ended up sounding different than what it was intended to? Was there one that you just had laying around that you totally changed?
Yeah. Well, Slaves Rebuild, that country one, because then when I first gave Sean that demo, well, Reeves Gabrels laid down this crazy solo on it, which is awesome. That originally had a whole fast thrashy part to the end of it. And it just, you know, as we kind of added things to it and took things out, it just didn't make sense anymore. So we left it as this kind of dark sort of horror movie thing. And then Justin Broadrick got a hold of it and really made it a super horror sounding track. So that one went through a lot of changes. Year Hope Failed is another one that went through kind of a metamorphosis. The overall structure and arrangement's pretty much the same, but it was a much more kind of like thrash drum type thing, whereas now it's more of an industrial robots beating on big drums type thing. And that's true of Death Blood too. And actually we put the demo of Death Blood on another shameless plug on this cassette. You can hear it, but that was another one where, Sean really came in with like, big robots banging on, big drum sound. And before that, it was more kind of like just a kind of a stock metal drummer type vibe. So that was a big thing that I really asked of Sean, is just help me get, because if you listen to like Cyanotic albums or anything that he does with glitch mode, there's always just this monster drum sound, and that's what, I asked him to really help me with, and he delivered.
So this really didn't stay to the status quo sound of Derision Cult.
I don't, yeah, I think before working with Sean and his knowledge of like what constitutes a really powerful industrial track is far beyond me. I mean, he was a DJ at Neo, which is a big goth club here in Chicago, and at Exit, which is another one. And so he has a really good sense of like what's works in that capacity, more so than me, where I'm like a metal guy that's coming to it from that perspective. So I think, and I remember, right, one of the first kind of times we hung out, he kind of told me, my job is to make this sound industrial, and not so much like a metal band that has industrial elements, but like, no, this should sound like an industrial track. And so because of that, I think I guess kind of the way things sounded before really changed a lot. I mean, everything down to like, he was big on thinking about what beats per minute really kind of feel robotic, and there's differences. I never really thought about that, but he showed me how, like, between that 105 to 112, something about that just sound, I mean, the vision in your head is, some robot doing this, and when you think of things in terms of that, it allows you to do a lot more with the sound, and so I think that really kind of turned it on its head. Obviously, the production on this is a whole step up. We had a ton of layers, which I hadn't really done before, but these are all pretty dense tracks, and that's all Sean's know-how.
Any tracks standing out more to you than any right now on this album? I mean, I know from album to album you have your favorites, but I mean,
yeah, funny enough, we just kind of did people started commenting on, I was just looking at Bandcamp, and people are commenting on the stuff that they like on there, which, thank you to everyone who does that for sure. I really find myself listening to Life Unlit a lot. That's a good example of a track that sits in that 110 beats a minute, and it sounds like just robots going nuts. That one I liked that, because that's like actually a really kind of proggy guitar riff. And it sort of speaks to, I wrote that's one that I'd had for a while, actually. I wrote that initially just about people who jump on like social movement bandwagons but don't ever do anything,
Oh yeah.
Great, Black Lives Matter. You put a sign in your yard,
But don't do anything about it.
I mean, you know what I mean? And just how we've, and just kind of like those sort of social justice warrior people that, make a bunch of noise, but when you look at what they do in their personal lives or what
They don't do nothing. They're totally different people.
Yeah. And so that's what that track, I had written those lyrics after a particularly irritating incident. And, I think that's kind of ends up being one of those timeless messages, because there's people like that around all the time. But I just like how, that's a cool that mid tempo was probably the one that I think we hit on what Sean was talking about with creating that, sound the most. But I love Death Blood just for what it is. I got to work with my heroes on that. Got to do a dueling guitar solo with Reeves Gabrels, which, that's an epic bucket list thing for me. And I really, I find the one that's kind of grown on me the most, and I guess I would have expected this, is the Justin Broadrick remix of Slaves Rebuild. is and it'll be available to stream on like Spotify and all that Friday, but that one really, I see people check that one out the most, it seems like. That really grows on me. But yeah, you're right. They all kind of blend together, but this has probably been the one EP that I can listen to like months and months after the fact and still listen to it and not out all the problems.
And not be sick of it. It's like, still brand new.
Yeah, so I assume Sean's like, he was telling me, obviously that's a sign that you made something good, but he's got all kinds of records like that he's made, and I have my one. Well, two. I like that Sis Machine one. I'll still put that on.
You've got your two for now.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Do you think that you've hit your stride musically, Dave, or are you still just scratching that surface on how far you can go with your music?
No, I think I'm still scratching the surface. I think probably much to my detriment, I didn't work with people, like Sean or Chris or Reeves or any of the folks that have helped on this. And, it is what it is now, but I think had I done that sooner, I'd probably I feel like I'd probably be in a much different place, but that gets me really excited because it's like, hey, what it makes me look forward to doing more of that. So
Exactly.
No, I think I'm just scratching the surface. I feel like this, especially this EP, and part of it's on a new record. It's on a new label, Glitch Mode. It does kind of feel like a new, for lack of a better term, rebirth a little bit. Because
yeah,
new players involved. It's different era. We're even talking about doing some live things in the back half of the year. So it's like back half of next year. So no, I feel like we're just getting warmed up.
Were you a little starstruck though, doing the dueling guitar solo with?
Well, the thing about Reeves is he's such like a down to earth guy, and you get the sense in talking to him. And I don't think this would he wouldn't have a problem with me saying this. Is like I got the sense that he sees David Bowie, Robert Smith, the Rolling Stones, Ozzy. These are all people he's recorded with. Like, those are jobs that he has, and he treats them all kind of with the same what's the word I'm looking for? Like respect, or he kind of sees people all the same. You get that sense, he doesn't
playing field for everybody.
Yeah, he doesn't come off like a diva, or you don't you don't really feel like you're talking to someone who is like too good for you,
Yeah.
So that helps, and I'm sure that's probably why he's so successful, why he's able to get so many gigs, is
sure,
in addition to his playing. Because I'm not naming names, but I've met people who are not like that, and they do kind of come off like they feel like they're up here, and spending time with the wee proletariat is like beneath them. And he definitely made it easier. And by the time we were working with Reeves, I felt pretty strong about the tracks. Like, okay, he might say no, but that's not a knock on what we did here. Because by that point, Chris Connolly was involved, and like, all right, it wouldn't destroy my ego if he refused to work. We did reach out to Henry Rollins.
Ooh, nice.
And he did listen to the tracks and everything, but I think he had a tour coming up, so he passed. But there was that.
He passed for this round. He passed for this round.
Yeah, right. Well, I originally had a vision for, and you know what? I think it worked out for the better, because on Slaves Rebuild, there's almost kind of like a Tom Waits vibe to the vocal. But originally we were thinking, I had in mind Henry saying those lines, and so we reached out to him. And at this point, by the time we got to that point with that track, it was like, well, let's just see how many yeses we can get. And and not worry about whether or not we're playing a batting out, punching above our class. And yeah, because then like even on this, like with Death Blood, Martin Atkins does a remix on here that's amazing. And he was the same way, like same as Reeves. You didn't get a sense that he thought he was like better than you, and what's some peasant like you doing bothering like I just didn't get any of that vibe from the people that ended up working on this. And I'm sure there are people like that out there, but
Oh, you know it,
yeah.
man. It's like, and I'm going to say this straight up. I don't care. I've seen bands treat up and coming bands that look up to some of these bands, just treat them like shit.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute dog shit. And I'm going, wow, really? You once was in their shoes trying to make yourself out there, and you're gonna, treat these kids that way? Nay, sir. Nay.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I've seen bands do that, and I think part of it, especially at the age I'm at now, I'm kind of like, I'm so over that, man. I'm a grown ass man. I don't got time for divas, and I've built successful businesses and everything, so I have my own. I have my own ego to stand on, I guess. But I think the thing that is, what's that saying? You'll get stepped on the way up, and you'll get stepped on the way down.
Yes, sir.
And it's funny too, because I do in my life, what I've noticed, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but the people that are successful for like over the long haul, aren't going to be those people that treat those bands like shit.
No.
The ones and I think it's because if you act like that, the world has a way of sorting those people out, and they become the has-beens and everything. Because I noticed like there have been people I've met that like they strike me like that, like, man, he didn't have to spend that extra time talking to me, or he didn't have to do this, but he did. A good example as David Ellefson from Megadeth, formerly Megadeth, renewed me and my wife's wedding vows a few years ago, and
cool.
He didn't have to do that. He just did it because he thought, oh, this is going to be a cool moment. And, and again, I mean, I would think that would have been, and this is when he was in Megadeth, I would think that would be somebody who probably could have something better to do. But, I think too, with some of that, when you're talking to people who have some fame, it's this would be my advice is don't if you fanboy out in front of them or totally this type of stuff, I think that will cause them to sort of treat you, they put you in a different category, and it's they can still be cool to you, but if you're talking to them like person to person,
there's a different vibe, totally.
Yeah, so but I get it. It's hard to not be starstruck sometimes.
Jim Marcus, he did the artwork for this album. How was work with him? Did he get exactly what you wanted?
Oh yeah, Jim is he was one half of Die Warsaw, which was a very seminal industrial band in the late 80s and 90s, and huge influence on me, huge influence on everybody in this town. And Jim is also a very famous visual graphic artist. He's done a lot of he's actually, one of the things he's really renowned for is all the fonts he's created, font sets and stuff he's invented over the years. Jim was somebody that I kind of knew just from around, and I really like his aesthetic. Like if you look at like the Go Fight albums, that's his current band, or any of the old Die Warsaw stuff, he has this real almost kind of anti-consumerism vibe. Mm-hmm. And he's really good at like am I saying this word right? Iconography, like making like really cool, which he did. He designed this for us, and this new logo. But the other cool thing about Jim is he's kind of like me. He's an ex-advertising guy. So he kind of knows, he's been in the room, some of the same rooms I have, and where, we're going to create a narrative or we're going to do negative marketing that will elicit a reaction and play 3D chess with, people. And so he got it. But I didn't really give him much direction other than that. Like, hey, here's the tracks, here's what they're about. And he kind of took the vision and ran with it. And I think honestly, I've never been as happy with the visual output as I am with what he's done. It's awesome. I mean, we he designed a new logo, which I think works fantastic. He kind of designed that new, I guess what's going to be our new mascot. The cover for Mercenary Notes, he really wanted to play with like neon and these kind of vintage / modern cityscape type things. And yeah, he knocked it out of the park, man. And Jim's a good guy. He's somebody that there it is.
I got you, my brother.
Yeah, he's he designed this. He designed kind of the way the singles look. We've got a line of shirts. I'm wearing one now that he did. I love that. It was almost kind of like he brought a whole new dimension to this with the visuals he did. But yeah, Jim's a good guy, man. I'm looking forward. We're talking about some other stuff to do down the road, and he's got some new Go Fight stuff coming out, and he's also an awesome singer. So I don't know if that's a hint for things to come.
As always, man, what do you hope everyone takes away while listening to these new songs or just any of the Derision Cults 16 albums, folks? They got 16 albums, different projects.
Well, we ended up condensing a whole bunch of the old ones down to one big comp because a lot of those early ones, when I look at them now, especially now kind of doing the glitch mode stuff, they kind of came off as like demos. And
yeah, okay.
It just made sense to like, okay, because like now what I'm seeing happen is, especially with the label and just more people kind of being aware of what we're doing. If they want to kind of check out all that stuff, I want to make it easy for them to do, so it's not a comb through a whole bunch of, it's like here's a big demo. So now there's a thing called Prior Machines that I put everything before Man Alive in there, and people can check that out. But in terms of big takeaways, well, first and foremost, man, I hope people dig the jams. We really, they're big beat, big angry robot noise music. In terms of the music, the lyrics, and kind of what we're taught, kind of the point we wanted to make on it, I think it's more just that age old kind of think for yourself. Don't, every bit of message, every piece of news you read has an angle it wants to work. And we just live in a world where we're just bombarded with more and more of that stuff. And so give yourself bandwidth, give yourself space, and but most importantly, enjoy the industrial metal.
Has Derision Cult met your expectations, or is it too early to say so for sure?
It's too early to tell. I don't have any plans on, not doing this, so, my expectations at first is I just wanted, when I first kind of started doing this, it was like, can I actually record a song and put it out in the world by myself? And then it was, all right, well, that kind of worked. Could I make something that people will check out? And so I've constantly raised the bar. For myself, I don't, it's funny because I think I've been the most successful with Mercenary Notes in like getting kind of what I had in my head out onto something people could hear. And to me, that's always kind of like the goal. That's kind of like the thing. Like, was that a success or not? And I think I've achieved that. Now, once it's out in the world, up until maybe last year, I kind of looked at like, well, it's the song's job to find an audience. It's not my it's not my problem at that point. But I think it's kind of like, my DNA to enjoy marketing and doing things like this. And so I want to do more of this kind of stuff. So that's where the too early to tell comes in. But I definitely think I've gotten to a point now where I can take an idea and with the help of with the right team, we can translate that we can bring it into being.
All right, so this is a new question I'm adding in here.
Man.
Oh, buddy, I got my buddy to be the guinea pig, the very first one to do it here. If you could play one show with a band, not Dave McAnally and Derision Cult, but if you can be one person of a band and play one show, whatever epic show that it was, what band would it be, and what would the show be possibly?
Oh, that's easy, man. I would be Tom Waits' guitar player on the Glitter and Doom tour.
Oh, wow.
I'm a huge Tom Waits fan. And like that guy, that tour in particular was just it was like a dark carnival or something. And I would have loved to have done that. So yeah.
And you got that. You got that like in 2.1 second. I mean, it's like,
well, as you were saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's
you had to, okay.
A lot. And how many shows would I rather just like watch versus be a part of? But that one, like, especially the way his shows are, like, just being up there making all that big noise would be awesome.
And dude, every time I listen to Tom Waits, I have to drink water because I feel for the guy singing, because I just want to. I'm like, give me some water. Give me some water. But his voice is iconic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. It's iconic. So, my friend, thank you for doing this interview with me as always. And how can folks stay in touch with you? Buy this new album.
Yeah, you can check it out on DerisionCult.com. That'll take you to Bandcamp, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you can get it, anywhere that we have it available. But then, you can follow me on Facebook on there too. That's probably where I'm the most visible. I don't know if that makes me an old guy. I haven't become a TikTok star yet.
A boomer.
Yeah, right. DerisionCult.com is kind of my home base.
Hey, before I let you go, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Absolutely, man. Hey, this is Dave McAnally from Derision Cult, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up for you guys and gals. Please get out and check out the Facebook page. It has our podcast link and that YouTube link. Get out and subscribe to that YouTube link because we've got a lot of great stuff coming up, and you're going to see some awesome interviews. Check out Dave McAnally. Pick up his new album that's out right now. It's entitled Mercenary Notes Part 1. Get out and check that out and support my friend. Please support my friend. All of us need support, every single one of us. And we will see you next time on BODS Mayhem Hour. Thank you so much, Dave. And you're on here all the time, man. You're welcome. This is your home. It's your home, brother.
All right, man.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.